My husband, mother-in-law, myself, and at the time our 3 children were moving back to Oregon from Tennessee in early 2015. We were bound to have a terrible time as soon as we started. I mean, right away we began having serious car trouble. After getting through slowly to New Mexico, we got temporarily stranded at a small settlement on the Navajo reservation. At first, everything was fine. The people who lived there were amazing, kind, and overall some of the best people I've ever met. We had some dogs at the time and were told under no circumstances to leave or let them out after dark, as being in the middle of nowhere, there were several types of predators around, among quote-unquote other things that would love to get a hold of your dogs. That was fine with us, as it was an unfamiliar area. In the meantime, we did what we'd been doing all along and began trying to find a new water pump and thermostat for the car. This took almost a week, and the closest place was the next town over, which was about 20 miles away. While searching for these items and how to get there, things began getting a little strange, to say the least. The people began to get more nervous around us, aside from the children who lived in the small community. Cats and other house pets started turning up missing through our stay, things of that nature. Well, the kids decided to take us out exploring one day, with their parents' permission, of course. They decided to take us to a short cave they knew of. We left around 10:30 a.m., and it was about an hour walk to the cave. Nothing was overly strange about the cave, or the half-hour walk through it, from one side to the other. There were a couple of bats, some low-hanging pieces of rock we had to belly crawl under, pretty much normal cave stuff. However, when we got out on the other side, it was getting dark. That in and of itself was extremely odd, and shouldn't have been possible. However, it was, so we decided to take the road back to make sure we wouldn't lose our footing if it got dark. Then the really strange things happened. There was no wind, and it was eerily silent. The kids we were with had begun to almost run back to the small town, and we were all doing all we could to keep up with them. It felt as if we were being watched and stalked at the same time. There were no sounds of crickets or other night insects. Then we began hearing what sounded like coyotes howling and yipping quite suddenly, and they were close. Then came the voices of some of the tribe members. The kids told us to ignore the voices, to not look behind us no matter what. All the while they kept their heads tilted slightly down. We did as we were told, as the voices continued to call our names one by one. When it began to use my mother-in-law's voice, trying to get my attention, I knew this was all wrong. It even used the whistle she uses to call us when we're out and about, to let us know something is up. After about 20 minutes, one of the adults showed up in their car to pick us up. When we got inside to go back, we were asked what we heard or saw. We explained everything. We could see the color drain from his face. He floored it, but before he could, I looked everywhere for a source of the calls, but saw nothing. Though I did smell sulfur and death, which were thick in the air by this point. The following morning, we were told we needed to leave, as we were bringing devils around by being there. We were told it was nothing against us personally, and they wished they could do more to help us out, but they wanted us gone. We had until sundown, but even then, that was more than enough time. We got all of our things, and we were in the next town in less than an hour. My mother-in-law asked what that was all about. She and I are believers, but my husband is not. We both told her the same thing about the voices, and she went pale as well. None of us could explain it away. We decided there was only one thing this could have been: a skinwalker in the New Mexico desert. My name is Steve, and I live in the Philippines. If you don't know anything about my country, well, that's okay. To give you some background, the Philippines is an archipelagic country located in Southeast Asia, just below Taiwan and immediately above Indonesia. Our country was once a massively forest-covered land until we were colonized and industrialized by Spaniards, later by the Japanese, and then finally by the Americans. Although we do have our own share of ghost stories, monsters are more common here, as the Filipino people had a lot of tribal societies before our colonizers came. One of these commonly known monsters from our folk legends is the kapre. A kapre is a huge man-like hairy giant that usually hangs out on equally large trees. They like to smoke, and although not entirely evil, they're really mischievous. They have the power to confuse people, and one of their favorite hobbies is to get people lost in the forests. Well, the folk legends say forests, but I don't know if that's still true anymore. How do I know? Well, I might just have encountered a kapre yesterday in the city. My condominium is in the middle of the bustling city of Manila, the Philippines' completely crowded capital. It's an old rickety building, and the paint on some of the outside walls is already peeling away due to age. I'm surprised it even has a working elevator. It's convenient, though, because it's beside my school, and the rent is quite cheap, even though I live alone. It's not too bad, actually, if you can look past its obvious age. Before yesterday, I already encountered a few weird events. Not scary, but certainly odd. Here are some of them. The condominium association has a rule to turn off the elevators after midnight, so if you want to go out, you'll have to use the stairs. I never had problems going down. It's when I go up that some odd things happen. One early morning, 30 minutes past 4 a.m., I was going up to the 5th floor after blazing up with a friend just outside the building, when I curiously landed on the 3rd floor again. I scratched my head, wondering if I was just hallucinating. A few days later, at around the same time, I ended up walking up straight to the 7th floor. I mean, I guess skipping a couple of floors is fine, but it is irritating if something really is just teleporting me around. My unit is adjacent to an unoccupied unit. If I look out my window, I can see the window and the room of the other unit, as my unit and the other basically form an L shape. I hope that makes sense. Well, every 2 a.m., and for exactly 15 minutes after that, the lights of the other unit would turn on. I know there might be a simple reason for it, but I don't know what it is. I never asked our landlord about it, and as far as I know, the security guards never leave their posts down the lobby. And I never ever watched the room at exactly 2 a.m. I'm afraid that if I stared at the unit's dark room, once its lights turn on, someone or something might be looking back at me. So no, screw that. Another weird thing is I always smell, well, weed smoke when I go out the fire exit to throw away my trash. Sure, of course, some tenants might be using the narrow staircase to get lit, but I've never encountered anyone having a smoke session out there. I wouldn't even dare to smoke weed there because there's a CCTV camera pointing straight at the fire exit door. Well, now let's go to my feature story, to what happened yesterday. It was 11 minutes past 3 a.m. and I was studying as usual. If you're wondering why I'm still awake around these times, it's because I study from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. I would smoke at exactly 4:20 a.m. and sleep from 5 to 12. So yeah, it was just past 3 when I heard someone crying outside. I ignored it until the crying became louder. I got up and used the peephole on my door to check it out, to see what was happening in the hallway. To my surprise, the lights outside just turned off. I immediately picked up the phone on the wall and rang up the lobby. The security guard answered it. He said,
"What's up?"
I replied, "Hey man, can you turn on the lights up here, on the 5th floor?"
"Are they off?"
"Yeah, they're off."
No it's not.
"Yeah, it is."
"It can't be off. I'm checking the CCTV now. It's on."
"What? Are you sure there's nothing wrong with your CCTV? Because I'm sure it's off. I'm looking at it."
"Hold on. I'll send up Jake."
Jake is the other security guard, and as soon as Bob, the security guard I just talked to, hung up, I went back to my table and kept studying. The crying had stopped. It might be when I was wondering about the lights or when I called Bob. I don't exactly remember when. After a few minutes, the phone rang. I picked it up, and it was Bob again.
"Hey, the lights are on."
I went over and looked through the peephole. No, they're still off out there.
"Can't be. I'm looking at Jake right now on the 5th floor. He's waving at the camera. The CCTV's working just fine."
What in the world? I know this is weird, but Bob must have sensed something in my voice.
"Right on it. Hey Jake, can you knock on 504? Yeah, Steve's unit." Steve? Yeah, he's knocking on your door now."
I was soon horrified. "Bob, I don't hear anything."
"What the?"
The line suddenly got cut off. Do you know the feeling of utter hopelessness? Well, that's what I was feeling right then and there. It felt really weird, but in retrospect, I never ever realized how silent everything was. Although it was past 3 a.m., I usually still hear vehicles and other city sounds outside. I didn't hear anything then, except my heart pounding. I didn't know what to do. I wondered, should I open the door? I didn't believe Bob was joking. Why would he joke about freaking lights like this? About something so benign? And at 3 a.m. in the morning, no less. I didn't open the door. Instead, I returned to my seat. That's when everything turned into a crap storm. It's like someone dialed up the weirdness to the maximum level, out of nowhere. The first thing I noticed that was very wrong was the book on the table before me. It was a different book entirely. I had been studying something else, and this book was a different book. I mean, I do own this book. It's not like something else materialized out of thin air or something. But I'm pretty sure I was studying material strength before all this crap happened, not advanced calculus. If you're thinking about that movie 1408 right now, perfect. Because that's what it reminded me of. I heard sounds in the unit adjacent to mine, and although some of you might want to check it out, I didn't. No freaking way, man. I do remember what the sounds were, though. It sounded like a party. There were glasses clinking together, sheets ruffling, a TV on, some shuffling of busy feet, and there were no human voices, no telltale signs of anything decipherable. I think I got the word boondok from the TV, though, but it's probably just my mind messing with me. Boondok means mountain in English. I turned my attention away from the other unit at that point, because something weird was then happening in my room. Everything seemed to shrink and expand, like I was looking at everything from inside a quickly inflating and deflating balloon. I was just about to run out and open the door when something pinned my foot to the floor. I can't exactly explain this part. It's like there were hands pulling my feet down on the floor. I was stuck. I was getting nauseous that time, like my head was going to explode. I couldn't scream or make any sound at all. I was scared to death. All I could do at the time was try to pull myself up from this force on my legs, but it wouldn't budge. While all of these things were happening, I happened to get a whiff of weed again. That dank, pungent smell. I was about to smile, but panic took over. I don't exactly know the reason why, but I remembered my lolo, Filipino word for grandfather, telling me stories about the kapre and its giant cigarette. The explanation of kapre made huge sense to me that moment, like everything seemed to make sense then. I stopped struggling and did what a Filipino kid was told to do when they get lost in the woods. I took off my shirt and turned it inside out and put it on again. The sounds suddenly stopped, and the room slowly returned back to normal. Most of all, I was able to walk again. I felt so relieved. Nothing more happened that morning. When I asked Bob what happened earlier, he told me that right after our conversation on the phone got cut off, I just opened the door and talked to Jake. I don't remember ever speaking to him that night, and as I recall, there was no gap in my memory, and he was looking at me strangely, so I privately asked Jake for more information. He acted surprised and told me that after I opened the door, I just grinned at him, told him something in Spanish, something like, "Hola, vato," and then closed the door again. It was totally insane. And that, I think, was the end of it. This is my true skinwalker story. At the time of this experience, I had no knowledge, nor had I ever heard of a skinwalker. I was 19 years old at the time and lived in Phoenix, Arizona with my parents while attending community college. My sister-in-law had asked me to go with her to Tuba City, Arizona, to visit with her mother and pick up some papers. Her mother was a school teacher there on the Navajo reservation. We would be staying there overnight. Her mother lived in one of those small government houses on the reservation. There were about 3 or 4 houses near her on a small paved street. Except for a few buildings near there, it was pretty desolate. My niece and nephew were with us. We'll call my sister-in-law Mary, my nephew Mike, and my niece Amy. Mike was 10 years old at the time, and Amy was 9. It was early evening when we finally arrived in Tuba City. We had stopped at a fast food restaurant on the way to pick up dinner to go. Upon arriving at the house, we all ate together at a small kitchen table. We talked and visited a while before settling in the small living room to watch some TV. There wasn't a lot to do there, so Mary and I decided we would take a night drive and explore around the reservation. I know what you're thinking. It was a very bad idea, or a dumb idea. 2 white women who are in a strange place have no business driving around at night on an Indian reservation. Whatever. We drove around for about an hour and a half. Surprisingly, nothing weird had happened yet. We were just laughing, talking, and listening to music as we drove up and down dirt roads. After a while, we decided to head back. When arriving back home, we stayed up a little bit later, then decided it was time to go to bed. I slept in a small back bedroom on a twin bed next to a window with horizontal blinds. My nephew Mike slept on the floor in a sleeping bag in the same room. Mary and Amy were in the other room, down the hallway. During the night, I was awakened by strange scratching noises outside the window by my bed. It sounded like something was making long, deliberate, slow clawing sounds down the window, like when someone runs their nails down a chalkboard. I am a light sleeper, so this woke me up right away. I whispered loudly to my nephew Mike to wake up, asking him if he was hearing the same thing I was. Mike was sleepy and groggy, being awakened from a deep slumber, so he seemed confused at first. I asked him again if he had heard the scratching noise. He didn't answer. He was just out of it. He then lay back down and was out like a light. I was perplexed and a little frightened. I thought to myself maybe it was just a stray cat or dog, but I couldn't figure it out. I did, however, have no inclination to look out that window, so I simply lay there, listening. After several minutes, the clawing stopped. I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. I mentioned this at the kitchen table during breakfast, but no one seemed very interested. We left later that afternoon, and I never gave it another thought. 6 months later, I was attending one of my college classes called Indians of the Southwest. The teacher was lecturing us about different legends and stories of the Navajo people. He touched upon tales of evil medicine men, or witches, called skinwalkers. He began telling us that they are very dangerous and harmful. They have the ability to turn into or disguise themselves as any animal. They could take the guise of a coyote, wolf, or even a bear. They've also been known to follow people home at night. That's why you should never be out on the reservation after dark. You're never supposed to make eye contact with a skinwalker because they can possess your soul. You should never talk about them because you can draw them to you. They can cause havoc and bring evil into your life. An icy chill went down my spine. I remembered that night I'd spent on the reservation. I wondered if a skinwalker had followed Mary and I home that night after our drive. The realization that a skinwalker had targeted us fills me with fear. I think of this often, and I'm so glad I didn't look out the window that night. I'm also haunted by the fact that there was just a very thin pane of glass separating me from such an evil entity. And now I guess I know why no one in the family wanted to talk about it. Do you ever lie in the dark, but you think you see something that shouldn't be there? That's what happened to me when I moved into my new house just over 10 years ago. Though I swear, what I saw was more than just my eyes playing tricks on me. I had just turned 5, and my parents had bought my family a new home. It was a nice townhouse that couldn't have been more than 10 years old. The house was very welcoming and warm, but the room that was going to be my room had a different energy than the rest of the house. The air always felt thicker in there. We were living with our grandma before, so it was a bit weird to not have her around all the time. She was a very comforting person to me and made me feel safe. Once we moved in, I warmed up to my new house quickly. I was very excited by the change in atmosphere. In my room, I had a bunk bed that made the room feel a lot bigger than it actually was, but I will admit it did and always has freaked me out a bit. Since my parents are super religious, I wasn't taught to believe in ghosts, demons, and the paranormal. So even though I was scared, I never thought that anything bad could happen. One night, as I was lying in bed, like every other night for the previous month or two, I saw this dark figure slowly appear by the ladder that led up to my bed. It seemed to move slightly, but I didn't think much of it and brushed it off as my eyes playing tricks on me because of how tired I was. I slowly shut my eyes and tried to ignore the discomfort of seeing whatever I saw. After a long minute, I opened them to see a shadowed figure with long, slim arms and huge hands slowly making its way up to my bed. It had a slim chest that outlined its ribs perfectly. I was frozen in fear, but I did have the courage in me to slowly move to the corner of my bed in an attempt to get away from the creature, but it continued to move closer and closer to me. It stopped moving suddenly, its huge hands gripping into the wood around my bed to prevent me from falling. I heard a faint breathing from what could only be its head. There was a long pause between each breath, which made time feel like it was slowing down. I tried to speak, but the only noise that came out of my mouth was a quiet mumble. I forced myself to blink, since I had forgotten to, and as soon as I opened my eyes, the shadow had a pair of its own. Its eyes were deep mustard, and his pupils were shrunken. He seemed to stare at me for what felt like the longest minutes of my life. The slow breath steadily turned into more of a soft growl as I felt my body go cold. Eventually, I found the strength to scream to get anyone's attention. Then my mom came running into my room, and as the door opened, the monster quickly turned to look at the door, then melted away into the darkness of my room. Seeing the light come through the door was the most relieving feeling, and I ended up sleeping in my parents' room for the night. I will never forget the eyes that stared so deeply into my soul.